Hello to all fans of Naruto Lemon. I will post all Naruto Lemon Yaoi, Yuri, or Naruko Lemon stories only on the Boosty channel because Uncle YouTube condemns this. Therefore, I invite everyone who wants Naruto Lemon content to my Boosty channel. Good luck.
お前はどこまで見えている俺の死に様か
Uzumaki Naruto is thrown straight from the battlefield into a strange world, but similar to her own. Will she mend her broken heart and find a new home? Always happy to hear your comments and reactions. Enjoy reading, yours Alex. There was much discussion that day. Gojo and Yaga-sensei found a red-haired girl with serious wounds and unconscious on the territory. She emitted an energy that was not typical for magicians, but quite strong. Since the stranger did not come to her senses, it was decided not to spread the word about her presence in the college and to keep her appearance a strict secret and only among a few initiates. Naturally, the entire college knew about it. Yes, this is a reference to Harry Potter. Uzumaki Naruto has been out of the dorm for 2 years now, where she was placed until she turned 18 by the old man, the third. In fact, she was more than satisfied with the one-room apartment in a residential area where she spent her youth, but it so happened that she could not stay there after the shinobi came of age, and she had to look for a quick option. A year ago, she turned down the offer to lead ANBU, pushing that responsibility onto Uchiha Itachi and kicking Sasuke in the same direction. For about a year before now, she had tried by all means to avoid the role of mentor for a team of genin, because she believed that such experiments would not benefit anyone, neither the children nor herself. No, when she was about 12 years old, she actually seriously considered the possibility of becoming a sensei in that same academy. However, when the fifth handed her a jonin, that possibility melted away like snow in April, because the village cannot afford to have a strong shinobi languish in a job that could be done by someone else. Unlike those missions where only jonin could be sent. In general, after the war, there were not so many such missions. The economy was being rebuilt for peace, as were most shinobi, but Naruto could not boast of such luxury. The elders were vigilantly watching that the girl duly repaid her debt to the motherland. No, there was the option of starting a family. Moreover, the old schemers told her about it directly, but the only person Naruto saw her future with died in the Fourth World War. Uchiha Sasuke was a real pain in the ass. Frankly, she didn't know why or how she fell in love with him, if most of the time she wanted to hit the idiot over the head with something heavy. However, she's lying. There was something to love about him. Attentive, devoted, caring. He was there when Sasuke left the village. He was the only one who never doubted for a second that she could control the power of the bijou inside her. Sasuke had his flaws, but she had gotten so used to him during their acquaintance that she had learned to accept and understand them. They were terribly similar, which many people acknowledged. However, Naruto always thought that the thoughtful Uchiha, unlike her, was incapable of reckless stupidity. It turned out he was capable. And she killed him. 2 years passed, and Uzumaki still hadn't fully recovered from the gnawing hole left by his departure. The day Kakashi finally thrust a team of children into her care was nothing special. It was mid-March, and the third trimester at the academy had just ended, meaning that the graduates were about to join the ranks of the genin. Naruto had resigned herself to the fact that she would have to deal with them for the next couple of years until the kids became chunin. The thought was almost not repulsive, but that didn't stop her from mentally creating a hellish training schedule so that by the end of July the kids could try to pass the promotion exam with honors. Uzumaki came to the academy early and settled down in a tree, saving herself from both people and the sun. Still, she wanted to see her charges in person, and she carefully thought about what she could scare the kids with to test their team spirit. Of course, she had had those same bells for 4 years already, but Uzumaki wouldn't be herself if she didn't want to show off on the occasion. However, the meeting never took place an hour before. An attack occurred, which the girl urgently went to repel. Yes, she didn't aim to become Hokage. Every time someone casually mentioned that she would be a great replacement for Kakashi in a few years, Naruto would shudder. However, that didn't mean she didn't want to protect her village with all her heart. All these people are her only family. It doesn't matter how they treat her, the main thing is how she felt. But she felt that she was not going to let any Otsutsuki hurt her people. But by acting rashly and on the fly, Naruto didn't take into account that they had actually come for her. The trap snapped shut, but nevertheless, all the plans of the invaders unexpectedly collapsed. Because on this day, Uzumaki Naruto suddenly disappeared while trying to change some technique, and no one could understand or find out where exactly she went, and whether the girl was still alive at all. Her head was like cast iron. Naruto was literally hurting everywhere, and she wasn't sure when she had last felt something like this. Maybe when she had almost died for the first time. Or when she had used unrefined Ku chakra. Either way, it felt really bad. And two more rather strong sources of energy irritated her sensory abilities. But the worst thing was that she didn't remember how she ended up here. Last thing, she was on her way to the academy to meet the new team. What happened? Uzumaki carefully assessed the emotional background of those around her. There was no hint of hostility there, so she relaxed a little and allowed herself to open her eyes, sitting up on the bed. The door to the room swung open. The first to enter was a middle-aged man, about the same age as Kakashi. He hid his eyes behind dark glasses and looked quite formal and sleek, with a short, dark haircut. However, it would never have occurred to Naru to call him a pencil pusher. The man had obviously been working out, because his muscles were clearly visible under his black suit, and on top of that, he walked and held himself like a seasoned warrior. The second to come in was a white-haired guy, her age, maybe even younger. He was also wearing glasses, but they were funny, rounded, and completely impenetrable black. Could he see anything? The guy was tall. Really tall and thin as a rail. When he turned his head in her direction, Rue had the feeling that she was being seen through. The blonde's lips stretched into a bright and completely idiotic smile. The sensory system was scalded by a new alien force, and Naru had to hold himself in place. Who was this guy? The feeling from him was unpleasant. Like the chakra was wrong, turned inside out. Like the unrefined energy of one of the tailed beasts. Plus, there was a lot of it. Really a lot, if she said so. Maybe on the level of an Uchiha or something. Not as much as her or any of the Bijou, but close enough. He is dangerous. Although his emotional plan, on the other hand, was not so bad. A little boredom mixed with curiosity. But still no hostility. She was so distracted by the guy that she lost sight of the man. "Miss, do you speak Japanese?" he asked, stepping forward a little. Naru understood every word. It was the common language of the house, everyone spoke it. But if he was asking about the language, was that statement true for this place? Apparently not. "I speak this language," the girl said, sitting up a little straighter. She didn't say yet that she had no idea what Japanese was. Was she still in her world? The likelihood of that was slim. That's right, there was an attack. And she got involved in the fight. Also, the seal was designed to throw everyone related to the Otsutsuki clan within the area of effect out of the world forever, with no right to return. Technically, there was a small amount of that blood in it, so. Kami, if only none of the Uchiha and Hyuga were around at that moment. She didn't feel her marks. Which was alarming at all. And Kurama did not respond to her mental calls, and she felt his presence poorly. Was the tailed beast sleeping? The last thing she began to remember was that the redhead was cursing her in every possible way while she was completing the technique. Putting all her chakra into it to the last drop. Even if he decided not to leave her body, which should not have withstood such a load on the hearth and channels, this technique should have had a strong effect on him too. Last time, after the war, the tailed one fell asleep for almost 2 months and the sensations were similar. But she could not check her subconscious, now was clearly not the time for meditation. "Okay, could you introduce yourself?" The man nodded approvingly. Naru's lips curled at the corner, but she quickly smoothed out her expression. Shinobi didn't say their names first. Especially in foreign territory, with strangers. The exception would be a fair fight, and only if it wouldn't harm the village. Nara didn't like to go around shouting that she was the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox. Nor did she like to show off her last name. The demand for her Uzumaki abilities was quite high. But, yeah, if it's military protocol and she doesn't intend to cause a conflict, she should have introduced herself. Uzumaki Naruto, the red-haired girl responded, putting on her usual smile. Strange name, the young guy chuckled. The dark-haired man hissed at him discontentedly. Uzumaki-san, the man said in a measured voice, do you remember what happened to you? Where do you live? What is your occupation? How did you end up with such an unfriendly neighbor? The blonde added in a cheerful voice, and this made Rue brace herself, mentally calculating the arsenal available to her. He knew, or realized? Was that feeling a sense from his sensory technique, that she was a Jinchuriki? It was dangerous, and it felt like an interrogation. Although Nara was somewhat comforted by the fact that Kurama was still inside her, even if the connection was broken for now. On the other hand, she was an intruder here. They had reason to be suspicious. Naruto relaxed her shoulders, keeping a small smile on her face. So, I have an idea of what I was doing at the last moment, and based on this, I can assume that I ended up in another world, which is yours. Allow me to introduce myself again. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, I am a shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato, and yes, Kurama has been sealed in my body since the day I was born, and I guarantee that it will not cause you or your loved ones any harm as long as I am its vessel. She seemed strange to Gojo. She had strange red hair, strange two types of cursed energy in her body, which couldn't be, strange scars on her face that looked like a mustache, and strange clothes. Her facial features were similar to Japanese, but that was the only thing that wasn't strange about her. Yaga immediately assigned her for treatment. She was most likely a shaman, although here's another oddity, she was not in the databases, although Gojo knew that she was strong, even if at the time of their meeting she was barely alive. She had strange, stubborn blue eyes like a warm summer sky, and a strange accent. And she had a strange name and history. Uzumaki Naruto. He could admit to himself that the girl, or was it a girl? Was she still a teenager with old eyes? Was predatory beautiful? The fox eyes and scars played into her hands, and she knew how to smile beautifully, which transformed her already bright face beyond recognition. She didn't speak loudly or quietly, her tone was practiced and calm. She knew what she wanted and what she would achieve. It was obvious that she didn't know who was in front of her, but Satoru could clearly see that she had an idea of their strength. However, she didn't grovel. In fact, although it was impossible to estimate how strong the red-haired one was, the mage had a suspicion that she was strong enough to be of a special level like him or Suguru. This aroused curiosity. And if so, Gojo was not going to hand her over to the elders, to be torn apart. She was stuck here. Not just in this world, and yes, it was indeed another world, but also in the capital's magic college. Under the supervision of a shameless guy with strange glasses, who seemed inappropriately overexcited and happy. Had she looked like this to those around her before? Perhaps? Yes. Well, Naruchan, Satoru Gojo, that was the white-haired man's name. His companion introduced himself as Masamichi Yaga, said in a cheerful voice, opening the door for her. Inside was a small, cozy room. She wasn't one to complain, honestly, here's your humble abode. Nice, thank you, Gojo-san, the girl smiled with the corner of her lips. There was a mysterious council of elders who allowed her to stay here under supervision, although they were not too pleased with this fact. Her guide said that the elders voted to kill her, but he and Yaga insisted that Rook could be of more use alive. When he told her about it, taking her from the medical center, he was beaming, as if he expected praise. It was not difficult for Naru, she really nodded in the right places, smiled and thanked. If these elders were even a little like her, then there was something to be thankful for. Well, Naru-chan, I don't think there's a big age difference between us. Satoru suddenly almost whined, wrapping his long fingers around her shoulders, turning her towards him. Ru had to lift her head to see his face, because she barely reached his chest. Another tower to her delight. "You're breaking my heart with your formality." The kunoichi blinked at the lips pouting in childish hurt. His emotional background was strange, and Ru couldn't decipher this jumble, but, how funny. It was really funny, if you thought about it. She snorted, suppressing a laugh, but allowed a soft smile to spread across her lips. The closest she had gotten to a normal, genuine smile since Shirsui's death. "Okay, Satoru," she agreed softly, squeezing the long fingers on her shoulders, "and by the way, I'm 20. She didn't like suffixes, really. She used formal ones when she had to. She called her friends by suffixes if she wanted to tease them. Sasuke still twitched when she effectively drew out Chan after his name. "Yes?" The guy squealed, squeezing her shoulders even harder and twisting her in different directions. "But you don't look like you're older than me. I thought you were 16 or 17. He had such a comical face, to be honest. Even with those awful glasses and that unpleasant energy, she was willing to admit that she liked Satoru Gojo. Ru grabbed his elbows, stopping his movement before he could shake the soul out of her. "How old are you?" The guy immediately pouted, turning his face away from her, as if he were a child. Naru blinked, trying to understand where this strange feeling of déjà vu came from, and then she remembered. This is how Shisui behaved when he didn't want to tell something, putting on the mask of a capricious child. The memory upset her a little, but Ru didn't let it show on her face. "Satoru, I don't treat people any differently based on their age," she said, letting go of the other's elbows and gently touching the guy's sleeve of his black uniform. "In my homeland, it's not customary to judge someone by the number of years they've lived. That's not what defines a good shinobi. I asked because you asked, and I thought it was polite. If you don't want to, don't answer." The blonde tilted his head to the side, then pulled his glasses down his nose, looking at her with attentive blue eyes. And what eyes? At first, it seemed to her that a fragment of a blue diamond caught in the sun was shining on her. Then she thought of the sky, because the glare in his iris resembled feathery clouds. The eyes really did glow, and Ru thought that it could be his technique, when once again she felt as if something was scanning her. This time she shook her shoulder, shaking off the unpleasant feeling. "But you were upset that I didn't want to answer, even if you said that you didn't care," Gojo said categorically, and Naru blinked, trying to comprehend what he said, and then leaned forward, grabbing his hand. "Did you read this in my emotional plane? Are you an empath too?" She might have been a bit hasty and eccentric in her statements, but she had never met anyone in her life who could read emotions, except for Kurama, but he denied his gift and couldn't stand people. Satoru blinked, taking her hands in his again. Long, beautiful fingers that didn't feel cold or warm, smooth or rough. It was strange, and the shinobi suddenly remembered that she had never felt any of those things while Satoru had touched her, or while she had tried to touch him. And also, the air around him felt strange. Like it was moving in the wrong way. "No, it's just that my 6 eyes allow me to peek a little into your energy structure." The guy waved his hand dismissively, leaning towards her, almost nose to nose, but she still didn't feel his hot breath on her face. "Are you an empath? Maybe you can tell me what I feel?" Naru had enough self-control not to be embarrassed, although Jiraiya's stupid books immediately popped into her head. She pulled away from the blonde, throwing her hair out of her face. "I try not to use this gift all the time," Naru said quietly. "It's not polite, and not very pleasant for me, to be honest." Satoru subdued her with an attentive look. Uzumaki did not expect him to understand, after all, no one did, but the guy unexpectedly nodded seriously, which did not fit with his previous role. "I think you should take a break, Naru-chan. We have a busy day ahead of us tomorrow." Days turned into weeks, which in turn turned into months. Naruto settled in here quite well, training and looking for the seal to get home before Kurama finally got in touch. Her attempts were hopeless. Unless she wanted to die, of course. She had exhausted all her chakra that day and was only alive because, according to the laws of the universe they found themselves in, chakra was not a decisive factor in life, unlike physical health. The fox actually fell asleep, having spent all his strength to drag her into this world, and when he woke up he was not the best conversationalist. In fact, their chakra was a counterweight to the cursed energy that the local mages used. They, Gojo, and later his friend Suguru, conducted many experiments and training, finding out the influence of each other's energies. Despite the polar opposites and the fact that Naru was a great delicacy for both curses and shamans, their techniques were not too difficult for her and Ru quickly learned to exorcise curses on her own. And being a master of Huan, she had learned to bypass other people's techniques. Just look at Satoru's face when she overcame his infinity by flicking the shaman on the nose. All it took was a little redoing of the Haration. Gojo's technique worked as long as both objects were in the same dimension. But Uzumaki, using the flying god, created a subspace connecting point A and point B, which nullified the effect of the technique. The white-haired man was sulking at her for a while until Suguru hinted to him that at this rate, Uzumaki would find herself a more interesting company, where people would appreciate her efforts and talent. She liked both boys. Busy with work, as she eventually became, they both still tried to spend time with her, and for the first time in a long time, Naru felt that warmth she had lost after the war. She was home. However, there were still many things to worry about. The life of a shaman was not easy or carefree, in many ways it was similar to that of a shinobi. There were missions, ambiguous curses that Naru's empathy allowed her to understand, and elders that Ru had the displeasure of meeting in person. But Suguru was the one who worried her the most. Gojo brushed her off when she brought it up, because despite all the insight his 6 eyes gave him, he was a complete layman when it came to personal matters, but Naru saw something in Geto that worried her, so she tried to carefully draw him out into a dialogue. She thought that if he spoke out, he would get better. After all, keeping everything inside was destructive. She didn't realize then how wrong she could be. She should have paid much more attention to him, especially during one of their last conversations. Geto smiled easily, as he often did, lighting a cigarette. She herself did not smoke often, but the mission was difficult in a moral sense, so Ru smoked next to the dark-haired guy, putting her thoughts in order, simultaneously leading him to a conversation. Hoping that the guy would feel better, but he, as usual, waved it off. "Relax, Naru-chan," Suguru said in a soft tone, patting her head. They all liked touching it because of the positive chakra energy. "I know very well that it is my duty as the strongest to protect the weak. The rest is just production trifles. I can handle a couple of negative reactions from absorbing curses." Uzumaki blew some smoke out of her nose, turning her head towards Geto. She knew that this was no small matter, despite his carefree tone. Suguru clearly had problems right now. In her humble estimation, he was going through a crisis of faith. He needed to figure out why he was fighting or give up on this, because the ephemeral duty as a reason was clearly not enough. "I think it's right to protect people, not because you have the power and it's your duty. It's just that when you can help and do nothing, you're basically an accomplice," Naruto said softly, smoothing Geto's unruly hair. His condition had been seriously worrying her lately, especially considering the technique he used, but even that's not the main thing. "It's just, when I saved others, I always saved my soul first. It sounds a little crazy, but every time I manage to save people from the darkness, I feel like I'm saving myself from it too." "And if saving others requires you to plunge into this darkness?" The magician grinned tiredly, intercepting her hand and squeezing her fragile palm, pulling the girl to sit closer, and hugging her shoulders. Uzumaki had no idea how warm and comforting she was with all her chakra for shamans accustomed to the cold of the cursed energy around them. "Then we should find another way," Naruto said seriously, obediently settling her head on his shoulder, "because by plunging into darkness, you're disturbing not only those you're saving, but also those who care about you. Suguru, take care of yourself, okay? I know you don't want me or Gojo to help you, but, if you're feeling bad, please don't keep quiet about it." "I'll try, Naruto-chan. I'll try not to worry you at all." no matter how hard she tried, everything soon turned into a disaster. Geto went on a mission, after which he did not return. The elders declared him a traitor who killed an entire village of non-mages, and an impressive reward was placed on his head. Neither she nor Gojo wanted to accept this, so when Shoko said that she was next to him, both of them rushed to meet without thinking, wanting an explanation. In a crowd, his head might have blended in with other dark-haired people, if not for the trace of cursed energy, and the fact that few Japanese in that century wore long hair. Suguru. Gojo called out to him, stopping a few meters away when the shaman continued walking, as if he hadn't noticed them. Explain yourself. Geto turned around slightly, looking out of the corner of his eye at the installation of his friends. Gojo was blazing with anger and distrust, not wearing his favorite glasses for a change. Naruto had a strange, pitiful expression on his face, which was nevertheless mixed with denial. Shoko told you everything, the brunette said dryly, confident that their mutual combat friend, now a medical worker at the technical school, had conveyed his message. I have nothing more to add. So what, you're going to kill all the non-mages? Satoru frowned. The people around him continued to go about their business. Ru made sure that their conversation remained private for other ears. And your parents too? Consistency is important in this matter. I cannot make exceptions for anyone. That's not what I'm asking about. The white-haired man shouted. Naru could understand him. She had already been in a similar situation when Sasuke left the village. You don't kill if there's no point, do you? So he is. The guy shrugged. Uzumaki allowed the two to have a dialogue without interfering. After all, Gojo had known him longer. Are you going to kill all the ordinary people for the sake of the world of magicians? The six-eyed man said sullenly, throwing up his hands. There's no point in fussing over something you can't do. How arrogant, Geto said quietly, turning to face the two of them. You can do it, right? But you convince another person that it's impossible. I wonder if you're the strongest because you were born Satoru Gojo? Or does your strength make you Satoru Gojo? I've decided what to do with my life. All that's left is to give it my all and do what I can. Satoru jerked, raising his hands for the technique, but Ru gently grabbed his wrists, standing between the boys. Geto, no matter what happened in that village, we can talk about it. She had enough of one friend breaking her heart. She didn't want to go through that again, just because someone dear to her refused to talk to her. Besides, this time Satoru was with her, and she wasn't 12 anymore. You won't feel any better if you put this plan into action. How do you know, Naru? The dark-haired man smiled crookedly. Experience from the part of life that fell to you in your world? You try so hard to help everyone that it's hard to believe that your soul also needs saving, as you say. However, if the attitude towards vessels at home is the same as here, I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. It must be hard when everyone around you sees you as nothing but a monster. Naru flinched, taking a step back. Yes, most of the shamans looked at her askance because of kurama. It reminded her of the times when she hadn't yet proven to everyone that she wasn't to be feared, but that path had been long and painful, so Naru decided that in this world she wouldn't waste her time on such things. Besides, she had Gojo, and Geto, and even Shoki, who behaved perfectly normally with her, and that was enough. Still, the reminder was painful. Unexpectedly warm hands closed around her shoulders, pressing her against a strong body. Don't talk to her like that, Suguru. Satoru said angrily, hugging Naru from behind. Geto shrugged indifferently, turned around and continued walking in the direction he was going. If you want to kill, kill, he said calmly. That makes sense. Uzumaki felt a terrible sense of déjà vu as she looked at her friend's back. Sasuke had once walked away from her like that. And then everything had gone in the same direction, only getting worse. Should she allow that to happen again? This is a total crapshoot. Geto, Naruto called, clenching her fists tighter, stop. She rushed towards the guy, breaking free from Gojo's grip, and literally a millimeter away from her friend's back she froze, her eyes wide open. She no longer felt a single positive emotion in him. Empathy had given her alarm bells before regarding the shaman's condition, but Rue hoped she could help. However, it wasn't some kind of silencing like it had been with Sasuke. No, there was literally nothing in him, except rage and anger. The girl stubbornly pursed her lips, shook her head and resolutely headed after him, but Satoru got tired of just watching, and he intercepted her again. This time in a steel embrace, and not just a supportive one. As before. "Please, don't," he whispered, burying his face in the red crown of her head. Naruto shuddered with her whole body, feeling his emotions, and automatically squeezed his hands on her ribs. "What is this?" she whispered hoarsely, looking after Geto, who didn't even deign to turn around at her shout. They returned to the technical school, having listened to Yaga's reproaches for having missed a dangerous criminal, after which they dispersed to their rooms. However, the silence of the room very quickly began to weigh on the girl, so she went on Satoru's trail, tracking him by the cursed energy. Gojo was found on the steps by the main entrance. Uzumaki pursed her lips, falling next to him and sighed, hitting the guy hard on the shoulder. His background technique didn't work as she wanted, so the blow hit him right on the spot and made him stagger to the side. "Hey, why?" Satoru was indignant, looking at the girl. She rolled her eyes and demonstratively put her fingers to her temples, grimacing. "Your depressive background is giving me a splitting headache," Naruto said capriciously, sighing loudly. "Get that stupid expression off your face. You saw everything. And even more than me." Satoru waved his hand, turning his gaze to the path leading to the gate. "Yes," the red-haired girl agreed, "but we will return it." She said it simply, without pathos or unnecessary expression. As if saving a criminal doomed to death was a routine matter that wouldn't make them even try. Maybe it was because of that tone, or because of the way her blue eyes, not like his, but still, stubbornly gleamed, but at that very moment Gojo believed her. With all his heart and all that. He had never felt anything like this towards a girl before, but Naruto was breaking him more and more every day. He had long been ready to admit that she was his only weakness. Uzumaki suddenly stood up abruptly and extended her hand to him. "Let's go eat a couple of plates of sakura mochi, I have no strength left." However, it would be several years before they even heard of Geto again. Satoru had become a sensei at the tech school, which had caused Uzumaki to make fun of him when she found out, and had several troublesome first years under his care that he proudly cherished. That wasn't even counting the younger boy he'd ostentatiously snatched from under the noses of the Zenin clan, Fushiguro Megumi. Naruto seriously suggested to Gojo that he register as a father of many children in order to receive benefits, but he sent her away with such concern. Rue often began to disappear on missions abroad, relieving Satoru of some of the burden. Imagine her surprise when, returning to Japan once again, the first thing she heard was that they were preparing to confront Geto, who openly promised to unleash a bunch of curses on non-magicians in the middle of the city. He and Gojo were strolling around the technical college, leisurely exchanging news and eating dango. "Yaga is wrong," Naruto says tiredly, putting his hands in his jacket pockets when the candy is gone. "I don't think Suguru really expects to win with the help of uncontrolled cursed spirits released." "Do you think he needs Yuta?" Satoru purses his lips, hugging the girl. "You said yourself that the guy has great potential." Uzumaki shrugs, and then bites his cheek, deciding to say what is really eating them both. "I can't believe that Geto has gone so far. Stay in college with Maki and Yuta," Gojo sighs, running his free hand through his own hair. "If we're both just being paranoid, you won't meet Geto at all. If not, the guys could use your help. And I'll show up as soon as possible." "Trying to save my feelings?" Naruto laughs, pushing the mage in the shoulder. Suguru forces a smile, but deep down he admits to himself that he just wants to protect her. And no matter what Suguru is like now, he definitely won't kill her, and therefore you can rest assured. Leaving her in the technical school. The fight was grand. Suguru, despite the seriousness of his own wounds and the fact that he underestimated the boy, still smiles. Uzumaki Naruto hadn't changed at all. Even after fighting him, standing up for the children, she desperately didn't want to fight and still believed that she could bring him back to his old path. He wished he had at least a part of that impenetrable confidence and inner light, then perhaps their lives would have turned out differently. However, it was too late to regret it now. A familiar cursed energy appeared nearby. Obviously, it was all over, since he was already here. I wavered for a second. Geto smiled sadly, closing his eyes so as not to see the face of his best friend. The way she speaks always amazed me, and for just a second I wanted to go back to those times, and believe again that protecting monkeys makes at least some sense. Take care of her, Gojo. She is smart, but for the sake of her beliefs and saving others, she is ready to break herself completely. I know, the six-eyed man breathed out hoarsely. Thank you for not hurting them too much, Geto. I relied on you. Ha, the guy laughed, leaning back against the wall. She deserves more credit for this than I do. Although, she didn't fight seriously. She didn't even use any technique, dobe. Yes. Gojo finds her without difficulty. Over the years, they have gotten to know each other's habits very well, and they have several conventional places where one can always find the other if such a need arises. You forbade the destruction of his body, the girl noted, without even turning around. A cigarette was barely smoldering in her hand. Judging by the ashtray nearby, it was far from the first. She hadn't smoked for almost 5 years, as far as Satoru knew, and now she had started again. Yes, Gojo agreed, sitting down next to her on the engawa. Are you angry with me? No. Naruto takes a deep drag and exhales the acrid smoke. You lost your best friend. How can I be mad at you? Satoru pursed his lips and squeezed his eyes shut. He knew he had done the right thing, but that didn't make it any less shitty. But the worst part was that she accepted him after all that. And Suguru was her friend, too. I want to bury him properly, Uzumaki says, leaning on his shoulder, hugging him and taking another drag, and seal him so that no one can use his body after. Use it? Satoru chuckles, gently taking the cigarette from her and putting it out on the ashtray. She's had enough of this poison. Geto had a theory that if a magic caster can subdue a curse, then the curse can subdue the magic caster. Naru says thoughtfully, raising his eyes to the night sky. I don't want to test it in practice. The following year they see each other even less often. Ru is abroad, and the vessel of Two-Face falls on their heads. Of course, Satoru stands up for the boy, but the Council of Elders decides that he is the smartest here and sends his children straight into the clutches of a special rank, where Yuji Itadori dies. The shaman is angry as he sits in the morgue and listens to the excuses of the window that was with his students on this mission. He was ready to explode from any little thing, and more than anything, he wanted to take his anger out on someone. Perhaps Naru could fix his condition. She had a special aura, but it wasn't the feeling of her chakra that had the biggest effect on him, but the girl herself. Ask me why, Gojo demanded capriciously, continuing his monologue, intending to frighten his interlocutor even more, but suddenly a warm palm fell on his shoulder, squeezing it a little harder than was necessary for a greeting. The familiar smell of ink and tobacco touched his nose, and the shaman relaxed. Don't ask him, Ichiji-san, a melodious voice softly asked in Satoru's ear, otherwise he'll just scare you in an attempt to quell his anger. You do realize that you're taking it out on the middleman, Gojo? The man exhaled loudly, jerking the hand off his shoulder and hugging the fragile hand as if it were his property, with a quiet laugh. The girl awkwardly staggered, eventually leaning her whole body on him. I didn't think you'd show up so early, the white-haired man said quietly. Your student was killed, Naruto responded just as quietly, ruffling her blonde hair in a caring gesture. How could I not show up? It's all very touching, and you two are rarely seen so emotional, but I can open it, right? The brunette who entered intervened, nervously twirling a strand of black hair around her graceful finger. Whatever you think, Satoru began, when Naruto suddenly tensed up, getting up from him. Doesn't anyone else feel this? Naru had amazing sensitivity and healing abilities that even Yuri had a hard time matching. Although Uzumaki often dismissed her as not being able to hold a candle to the real medics of her world, in this world her chakra worked wonders. There was nothing surprising in the fact that she healed the huge hole in Yuji's chest and he began to breathe as if nothing had happened, although Naruto said that her merit here was small and the guy simply was not as dead as he seemed to begin with. Itadori jumped up, knocking off the sheet that covered him, appearing before them in all his naked glory. "Welcome to the world of the living and not so living, boy," the girl sang optimistically, carefully looking away to the ceiling so as not to embarrass the teenager. Suddenly she was pulled towards herself, her nose buried in a broad chest and fixed in this position by the back of her head. "Yo, Yuji," Gojo said happily, holding the kicking Naruto in a comfortable position for him, "welcome back." "Aha." The guy smiles happily, clapping his sensei on the palm and looking with interest at the red-haired stranger, who obviously brought him back from the other world. "Who do you think you are, Satoru?" She was indignant, fighting off the strong grip, but obviously she wasn't doing it very seriously. "Now let me go quickly, before I decide to scratch your beautiful eyes." "Well, get dressed, and we'll wait for you at the exit," Gojo sang cheerfully and, picking up the girl, he skipped out of the morgue. They each took care of their own business until the evening, then without any prior arrangements they gathered for dinner in Satoru's apartment. Rue never bought her own living space, brushing it off by saying that she didn't need it, considering the time she spent on business trips, and none of them were eager to talk about it at the technical school. "Maybe you should get yourself a vacation?" The man sighed when they were done eating, sitting down in a chair and putting his feet up on the table. "You've been working a lot lately." "You too," Naruto noted boredly, handing her friend the brewed coffee, "but I don't see you rushing to take a vacation. Or is it because the elders kicked out Yuji Itadori?" "You are also a vessel," Satoru said with displeasure, clenching his fists, still feeling anger and fury, "and in their eyes you are no different from the guy. The only thing that has saved you so far is your skills and complete control over yourself. And also the statement that the fox will be reborn after death. But what if they decide that the fear of you outweighs your usefulness? Then I'll kick their ass and go into hiding." Uzumaki shrugged, closing her eyes and leaning back on the sofa, which was her favorite element in this apartment. "You don't need to protect me, Satoru." "Stay," Gojo blurts out inappropriately, feeling her slipping through his fingers again, despite the fact that she was always there when he was sick or when he needed her. The truth is, it wasn't enough for him. It was always not enough. "Yaga offered you a position a long time ago, and you can help the boy with control." "You're right, none of us know what it's like to be a vessel." "You want me to stay under supervision," the girl sighs, lazily raising her eyelids and reproachfully looking at her friend. "I really was going to stay for a short time, to give a couple of tips to Yuji. But don't expect me to sit still and hide." Satoru knows that no force in the universe would make her do such a thing, even if he tried to lock her in this apartment, which only resembles a home on those rare occasions when the red-haired girl deigns to visit him. And, he was so tired, really. It had cost him a lot to admit to himself that he couldn't and didn't want to do without Uzumaki in his life. It had been scary to tell her, because she was probably the only person who could easily leave the strongest without any problems, but he wasn't going to keep quiet any longer. Besides, it was hardly possible to hide anything from an empath, even if she preferred not to pry into his soul. "Actually, I wanted you to stay with me." Gojo squints, clutching the glass in his hands, but doesn't turn to face her. Afraid that she'll laugh in his face and leave, slamming the door. "You're reckless," Naruto quietly responded, judging by the sounds, getting up from the couch, confident, proud, and in the end it won't lead to anything good. "I can't stand a broken heart, Gojo. That's why I ran away from you." Satoru turned to her, noticing that the girl was already standing at the door, with her back to him. He twitched, awkwardly jumping over the table, ending up next to her. He stutters, clasping the girl's hand and freezes in indecision. "You, please." He feels the red-haired girl shudder. Gojo Satoru never asks for anything. He manipulates or collects debts if he is bored and lazy, but he never asks anyone for anything. Everyone who knows him personally knows this. But Naruto has heard him ask twice already. The first time when Geto left and the second time now. Being the strongest must be terribly lonely, the girl sighed to herself and turned to the mage, pulling him into a hug. Well, she should know, right? After all, she was lonely, like him, until she came here. You're a terrible person, Naruto shared, burning the other's ear with her hot breath, and sometimes I really hate you, but you are dear to me, Satoru Gojo. End.